So rather than the usual, which is to have each of them make a few prepared remarks, I thought it might be interesting to have them have a conversation about some of the issues that we all are facing here today. And we're lucky because we have excellent leaders from different perspectives who each bring a different history and a different biography and different talents to the questions that we're all facing. So Robert, I thought I would start with, excuse me, Judge, sorry, I always get myself in trouble here.
Cousin, you can call me.
Cousin, I love that. I thought I'd start with you and just ask how, now that you have seen this come to fruition, what is it that you hope that this museum will do moving forward in the times we are as such an important symbol today?
Well, thank you for everything, for being here and for the honor. I guess to answer that question, I think that this museum can mean so much. It means so much to me, and I think to everyone in this room. And while no one building or institution can be a panacea, I think that this museum serves a lot of important functions that we need. I mean, first of all, in a way, it's a memorial. It is an institution which does something very important. It honors people who worked and sacrificed to make this country a better place, people who often did not get any honor while they were working or while they were alive. And that's important, but much more than that, I think it gives us all a lot of lessons about all of the work that African Americans and others have done to make this country a better place. And it takes hard work, and it's going to continue to take hard work to move us forward. And so, as people come here, I think we can all learn something from that and be inspired by it and help give us ideas about how to move forward. How did they do it with so much fewer resources and so much more opposition than perhaps we might face today? But they had the courage to keep on and to think of how to get around obstacles. So, I just think that we should use this museum as a way to help us figure out how to move forward.
So Ken, if I could turn to you, because of course you again played such an instrumental role in helping this museum be created, but you're also playing an instrumental role in helping us to rethink how we ought to think about economic growth and development in this world. I think we can all agree, whatever again happened in the election, that part of what was revealed was a deep fissure around how people are thinking about how the economy is working for different kinds of people. And if we don't figure out how to heal that deep fissure, we're going to constantly be at the kind of crossroads that we are today. And I wonder, as a leader of a great organization and somebody who's thought really broadly and deeply about the role of the corporation in the modern society, how you think that fits into the story, let's say, of a museum like this.
So let me just say, David, I'm going to answer the question, but I'm going to take my prerogative and make just 2 or 3 comments.
Please.
One, for everyone here, David Wilkins exemplifies the finest that you'd want as a leader and in academia. And the center for the legal profession was David's idea that he created from scratch. So you think about a startup, you think about an entrepreneur, of what he has been able to do, that he is clearly one of the giants of the legal profession. I also feel very privileged to be with Sherrilyn, who fights the battle every day, and Robert, what you did for the museum, But I also have to tell you, the leader of this museum, Lonnie Bunch, is just incredible. And one of the things that Lonnie says is, this is a museum for all Americans through the lens of African Americans. And that's a very important statement, because we too are America. And that's what this museum is about. And I have to also acknowledge my mentor and advisor, Vernon Jordan, who is a good friend, a close friend, and someone who has really helped me every step of the way in my professional career. And our friendship is special. So let me just say, fundamentally, what I believe very strongly is corporations exist because society allows us to exist. There is no inherent right for corporations to exist, but they have a responsibility. And the reality is, when we look at the income inequality that has been created over time, corporations have a responsibility to address it. And I believe firmly that corporations can be a very positive agent of change. The reality is, if you look throughout the world, and we've become more of a global world, what I would posit for all the issues that we're dealing with, that corporations are playing a more powerful role on the global stage. Now, the reality is that what is important for any leader, and therefore for any company, and I believe this firmly, is, in my experience, the type of success that I think is most important is it has to be sustainable. And the only way you have sustainable success is you have to capture the hearts and minds of people. And corporations have not always focused enough on the hearts. And if you want sustainable success, there has to be a focus on the hearts and minds. And what I've tried to do in my career is, in fact, understand that our people in the company make a difference, our customers make a difference, but also, very importantly, we have to make a difference in society. And so I think, David, the traditional lines between government and business are changing and need to change. But I also think that business is going to have to step up to deal with the transformation. People talk about change. When you talk about change and transformation, it means individuals have to change, governments have to change, and corporations have to change. That has to be our focus.
Thank you. So, speaking of change, Sherrilyn, you are battling change on both sides of the coin, because you're fighting an incredible rearguard action every day to protect the changes that we fought so hard for, that when you go down and look at those history galleries, so many people died for to put us in this position. And yet, you don't want to allow that to be our entire agenda. And you've tried to keep us moving forward on positive change at the same time. And the first question is, how do you do that? And do you sleep at night at all? We never see you sleeping. But also, what can this group do to help you in each side of that struggle?
Small question.
Yes, small question.
Well,
That's
thank
why
you so
I like
much.
to ask the questions.
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, David. Really, I echo Ken's comments, and that it matters that you have been engaged in the study of our profession for a very long time. And that's why this night is so important, because I do think that it's important to take a moment to recognize the role of the black lawyer in creating the America that I think we all take for granted. There were a set of black lawyers, certainly not even the size of all the people in this room, maybe half. Almost all graduates of Howard Law School, but not all, who created the blueprint, you ask how, for how you do it. They had a vision of America that did not exist. You know, I always talk about the fact that when Thurgood Marshall challenged segregation at the University of Oklahoma Law School, he tried the case the first day with his client, a black woman, Ada Sipplewell Fisher, and at the end of the day, they joked about the fact that only on that day did they realize that they could not eat lunch in the lunchroom of the federal courthouse where they were litigating the case. And Marshall said, well, you know, I'll keep trying the case, you bring the bologna sandwiches. It was a big joke. But it's actually not funny, right? Here he was working to chip away at Jim Crow. This was one of the seminal cases on the road to Brown versus Board of Education, and he couldn't eat a sandwich in the lunchroom. These individuals were not operating out of a vision of America that had ever existed. Nobody had handed it to them. They had a vision of what America could be, and they worked that vision until it was that. They planned to break the back of Jim Crow, and they did it. Now, it wasn't easy. There were losses. We never talk about any of the losses. It took 20 years to even get to Brown, and that was just the beginning. But it starts with having a vision in your head and a determination to believe in something that you can't see, that doesn't yet exist. And out of the work of that handful of lawyers came this room, which could not have existed without them. Most of us would not be in the positions that we are in without them. If we just imagine, you know, we just celebrated the 63rd anniversary of Brown. If it was 64 years ago or 65 years ago, just your trip here tonight would have been special and different. If you came through the airport, would you have been able to eat in the restaurant? If you were in a bus station or a train station, could you go anywhere you wanted to? Where would you have sat? All of that was created by this group of visionary lawyers. Not all African American, but mostly. And that's the homage I think we have to pay. You know, you said we are too American. There is a deep Americanness to the role of the black lawyer who shaped American democracy, reshaped it for the 20th century, changed the meaning of equality in this country. There's almost every room that probably you or I will be in over the next week has been touched by their work. That's powerful and extraordinary. So the blueprint for me is you can actually do it. You can actually do it. Now, what it takes to do it is an incredible amount of work, an incredible amount of determination, partners and supporters. You mentioned Bill Coleman. Bill Coleman was, you know, on his way in a law firm, one of the most brilliant lawyers this country has ever known. But when Thurgood Marshall picked up the phone and called him and said, come and help us work this thing that we think is going to break the back of Jim Crow, he was thrilled and excited to become part of the team. So it takes people who have devoted their lives to this work, but it also takes people who are working in other fields, who are partners. When I took this job, Ken knows this, I came to his office and said, how do I do it? How do I run this organization? And he walked me through. He said, I'll take you through the first 18 months. And he walked me through the first 18 months. What did I know? I was an academic. What did I know about how to run a whole organization like LDF? And so there are people that you reach out to who are, and many of you are in this room, who are helpful. And then it's the template of the people who came before you. It's Elaine Jones. I mean, I wear her out. She's on speed dial on my phone. This is the first woman director counsel of LDF, and I call her all the time just to say, I know it's not the same, but just let me just lay this on you, and she'll have a word of wisdom for me. And then in terms of thinking about how you don't stay on defense, how you keep the affirmative work moving forward, what grounds us is our connection with the people in the communities where we work. So there's all of this, and I'm tweeting, and I'm talking about it, and I'm engaging, and I'm going to see Jeff Sessions just once, and that was enough. And I'm doing what, you know, and we're litigating the cases, and you know, and all that stuff. But we're also deeply engaged with people in the communities, and so we're hearing from them. And so in 1 week, yes, we will be working on voter suppression in Texas. We will be challenging Betsy DeVos on her plans around public money for private schools, but we're also in Flint, Michigan, making sure that that city is not able to impose liens for unpaid water bills. This is a town with poison water, unpaid water bills, and 7,000 homeowners, leading them towards foreclosure, just to get that moratorium, which we're successful in getting, a moratorium on these liens that would have resulted in the loss of black home ownership for thousands of people. So,
Wow.
remaining at the multiple levels and remaining connected to the people in the communities where we work. Julius Chambers, the former director counsel of LDF, whatever plan I had when I was a young lawyer, many years ago, I was a young lawyer at LDF, and I would come into his office with my smart theory about the case I wanted to bring in this city in Oklahoma, and he would listen to me very quietly and play with a rubber band or a paper clip. Those of you who know Julius Chambers know what I'm talking about. And then he would look up and he would say, "And what do your clients say?" Meaning, you can have whatever idea you want to. What do the people say? What do they want? And that's what keeps you grounded and keeps you moving forward with an agenda that's not the outside imposed agenda, but that's the agenda that comes from the people.
So thank you. So I'm just going to ask one final question to each of you, and it really picks up on what Sherrilyn said about the future. So one of the findings you'll see in the report, we ask people what they think about has happened over the last 16 years, and in particular, President Obama's presidency, and how has that changed, if at all, what's happening with black lawyers and the legal profession today. And so there's some interesting findings there, but one of the most important is that one of the few things that gathers a very large support among our respondents is that black lawyers still have a special obligation to try to further the cause of racial justice in this country. But then when we ask, how do people think people are doing in furthering that cause, very few people think that people are doing as much as they should. So I guess I'd like to ask each of you this in conclusion. We just met as a group in 2016. There were over 800 people. Ken and the judge were both there. We'll meet again in 2021, so in 5 years. And what do you hope, as you look out on a crowd of black Harvard Law School graduates, but this could be a crowd like this of many lawyers, of many races, but who believe in a progressive cause, what do you hope that they will have done over these next 5 years? Judge, can I start with you?
It's a tough question. I did just want to take a moment to acknowledge my wife, Amina, my mother, Joyce,
Yes.
my wife's parents and my son. They've always been so supportive of me, and of course I wouldn't have been able to quit my job many years ago without their support, particularly my wife's support. But you mentioned
Here.
You mentioned earlier the group that was kind of like my kitchen cabinet, and I'd like to acknowledge all of them as well who are here. But I think it's really partly an answer to your question, because we just got together and we all had the same vision that there should be an institution like this, and we just started brainstorming about what can we do to be helpful to make it happen. And John Payton, who you mentioned, we contacted him, and he helped us get incorporated.
Huh.
There are lots of other people in this room who we went to who had ideas and who were helpful as we were lobbying and doing things. And I guess, I was a public defender at that time, and while I loved that job, I hated always being on defense. I hated always feeling like when it came to discussions about criminal justice policy or other things that I had responsibility for at that time, that I was always trying to stop what I thought was the next bad policy or the next bad law from passing. And I saw working on this as a way to go on the offense, to create something, to create an institution. And I guess what I would say, what I would hope that the people in this room would think about is that the defense is important, don't get me wrong, but think about how you can go on offense and get together with some people and score.
Thank you. Ken?
I think, Robert, that was very powerful, and this museum is a testament that you scored.
Yeah.
Let me just say, I will start off with a leadership maxim that I think about every day, and it comes from Napoleon. So I really do think about diversity. I always caveat that I don't want to wind up like him. But it goes like this, that the role of a leader is to define reality and give hope. And I think it's very important, one, that we're very clear, and Sherrilyn is terrific about this, of understanding what the reality is. But what's also critical is that we put together the game plans, concrete game plans, as Robert talked about, and we in fact dream big, and we think big. Because that's how this museum was created. That's how we've made such progress in this country, is dealing with challenges that people thought were insurmountable. And very frankly, when people come up to me and they say, boy, you've been successful, I think about all those people who went before me and what they were able to accomplish, and I say to myself, would I have had the strength to endure what they went through and in fact come out ahead? And that really does give me a great deal of hope. Ted Wells, who's in the back, my good friend, who I think is one of the best lawyers in the world.
Hear, 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 hear.
We talk about this often, that we're brown babies. Because I was born 4 years before. Ted, you were born 5 years before.
That means you're older, Ted,
And
by the way.
so I just wanted to put that in a subtle way. But what was critical is that all of the people, and I mean that not just African Americans, all the people who in fact enabled Brown v. Board of Education, they really did not even imagine the possibilities that we were able to achieve. They did not imagine that. And so, frankly, what I would like to see, David, is now is the time in a crisis, and I believe this in business, I believe this in life, that in a crisis is when you should have bold thinking. You got to break out of the mold. You can't accept what you believe is the reality. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to be a change agent, you have to make the future. And that's what everyone in this room needs to understand, is they're empowered to in fact make the future. And no matter what is being said, we can do that together, because I really do believe in people. And I believe in character and values. And I believe in the fundamental qualities of this country, even though this country did not follow those values and attributes at all times. But there were moments in our history where we achieved. And so I think we need to think boldly. And lastly, Robert, I'm going to follow you. I want to thank my wife, Catherine. and say that what is important also is family and friends, and understand that we are an extended family. Thank you.
Hear, hear. Sherrilyn.
So let me just follow on both of these extremely eloquent statements to kind of tie it together and say that I could not agree more about two fundamental things that I think are essential for this moment. First, I'm in agreement with Ken about this being the moment for the big dream. As crazy as every day is for me at this particular time in this country, and it's crazy, it's also incredibly liberating, because much of what had been concealed in the past has been revealed.
Mm-hmm. Hear, hear.
And I like truth. I like reality. You know, I wanted to be a civil rights lawyer from the time I was 8 years old, and so I am completely comfortable with the truth of racism and inequality in this country. And I'm thrilled that actually we can maybe begin to have a truthful conversation about that right now. And by conversation, I don't mean I'm not waiting for some grand conversation. I mean, I don't spend any time anymore explaining why the Legal Defense Fund exists, why we do what we do, is civil rights still important, are we post-racial? All those kinds of questions that 10 years ago we would have debates about, we might have talked about on this panel, are gone. So now we can get right to it. And that means that that's a springboard from which we really can imagine a future that I think is bold. My dreams are actually bigger now that I have not only seen it revealed, but even I've seen elements of it that I didn't know were still there. I'm feeling really emboldened to decide what America should be. And this is what I was talking about the vision of Marshall and Charles Hamilton Houston. They were imagining something that didn't exist. So I'm imagining things that don't exist too. I'm not just interested in ending voter suppression. I want every high school student who's 18 years old to walk across the stage, get a diploma in one hand and a voter registration card in the other.
Hear, hear.
I want an affirmative agenda, which is what Judge Wilkins was talking about. I was going to call him Robert too. Judge Wilkins was talking about, which is being on offense. Now, someone mentioned today that I'm wearing my Ravens colors, and I am wearing my Ravens colors. And, you know, this is a team that was known for its defense. But you can't win a football game without any offense. And when I took this job, I said I came to build an offense at LDF, and we remain focused on that. Despite this election, we haven't said, okay, we'll throw in the towel on the offense and now we'll just go defense. Yes, we have to put more resources into defense than we had anticipated, but this is the time when you have to preserve part of your intellectual and financial and lawyer resources towards pushing the envelope and moving the needle towards equality. And so we work every day on that agenda too, even as we try to stop the terrible things that are happening. So what do I want people in 5 years to do? Yes, I want them to be working on that offense game. I want them to be working on something that doesn't exist and hasn't been seen yet in this country. I want, when I call them, for them to answer the phone and help me and help our staff. And I want people to feel that this is not the job of civil rights lawyers. That yes, the role of civil rights lawyers is to engage in the maintenance of this democracy. That's what we do. We work on democracy maintenance. We go into the foundation and we dig out the rot and we tell you where you need to shore something up, and sometimes you can do a patch job and sometimes you need to pull the whole thing down. But it's everyone's job, and especially if America has worked for you, and if you're in this room, it kind of worked out for you. If it's worked for you, you have a special responsibility to work on the foundations of this democracy. And that means that every one of us has to take their turn doing a little bit of civil rights work. And you've got to figure out what that civil rights work is. You can do it with the Legal Defense Fund, you can do it in your own community, you can do it with other organizations, but that is your citizenship work, in my view. And so I'd like to see everyone engage in that. And then lastly, because I will look crazy if I don't acknowledge my two beautiful daughters who are here, Najma and Amali. Come on, wave your hands. Two of my three daughters. And I want to acknowledge them because I had my first daughter, Najma, when I was a young lawyer at the Legal Defense Fund. And I have spent many years doing very difficult work with all my 3 daughters, and they would probably say I am a bit of a workaholic because I felt this call, as I said, from the time I was 8 years old. And I've always felt that I was doing this work for that next generation, for them, but not just for them, because I really do believe that you have to love other people's children as well. But in the same way that I, the youngest of 10 children, was able to live this life I could not have imagined. I never met a lawyer till I went to law school. First black lawyers I met were Paulette Caldwell and Peggy Cooper Davis at NYU Law School. I didn't know any. But it could happen for me because of that generation and those generations that came before and created a world that I could navigate. It was the Civil Rights Act in 1964. That's when the northern schools said, well, we better desegregate so we can keep getting the money. And we could navigate, my family, me and my 9 siblings, through that life, and we could achieve something. And that's what makes my daughters' lives possible. I want that for everyone's children. And so that's the commitment. And for them, I'm doing it for my grandson, but for other people's children. Today in America, I believe that my 2 parents in Queens, New York, as working class people with 10 children, could not accomplish today what they were able to accomplish then. There were certain doors that were open, and there were certain pillars of public life that existed to support that kind of life. And I want to see those return. So that a family that has as many kids as my family had, immigrants who came here believing in this country, have an opportunity to make that dream really happen for themselves. And so that's the nature of the work. And I just pray that everybody sees that they have a little role to play. Some of you have a bigger role than others, but every single one of us has a role to play in making that true.
Wow. Well, I can only hope that we will take up that charge that has been given to us so eloquently by these 3 amazing honorees. You know, at the end of the first celebration of black lawyers, black alumni at Harvard, some of you may remember at the Sunday brunch. Jim, was it you, Jim Bowers? Somebody sang, keep your hand on the plow. Hold on, hold on. We'll try to do that. And in the meantime, thank you all for helping us be there so much. Thank you.